French curves are really useful in the sewing room, and of course if you trace your own patterns, they are indispensable. They are called French curves because, of course, they have its origin in France with all the haute couture and all that. So nowadays they usually come in plastic, which is really useful because you can see through them and place them where you want them to. Although I've also seen them in metal, and I guess in the past they were made in wooden, like this ruler I have that belonged to my grandma. I don't use it, I just have it as a memory. When you get a pattern magazine, all the patterns are already traced for you, so all the curves you will need are perfectly resized for your size. Supposedly, let's think that all of this is okay. But even though I love seeing the pattern magazines and getting ideas, I much rather do my own patterns, trace my own patterns, because there's nothing better than something that fits you perfectly to your own body shape. And these are ideal. I got this in my local singer shop. It's the Lutherlog. It's like a whole system of pattern making from Germany. I haven't used it. It was the ones they had in the shop, but I love having them. I've used them loads. Are you new to sewing? Or are you, on the other hand, an experienced sewer? It doesn't really matter. Consider subscribing because I upload twice a week, and that way you don't miss anything. We talk about sewing, we upcycle, mend, sew from scratch, and of course decorate as well. So consider subscribing. We laugh, we learn a lot. You can get lots of different ideas, and I'll leave you my Instagram account as well in case you want to have a look. If you have a look on the internet to see the kinds of French curves there are loads of different shapes, and you might think, well, I don't know if this is going to work, but they do. They have the same curves, the same angles, even though they have different shapes. There's an S-shaped one, there's a drop one from your armhole area, and even though I don't have that one, you can do it with this one. These are like the classic shape ones. And there are two different ones because they have different curves to work with. This long one, for example, is for trousers, for your hip curve, and trousers and sleeves as well. And it says here to trace lines of your trousers, skirts, hemlines, and any light curve. And on this one that has a more pronounced curve, because they had to use more plastic, they made the most of it by adding more information. So it has different button scales and pleats, and of course a little crack here where you can trace different curves as well, smaller ones. And of course they are both traced in centimeters, not inches. And this other one that has a more pronounced curve helps you with all of this, helps you with all the necklines, with all the armhole tracing, and of course crotch lines as well. And when using the French curves, you just have to accommodate them until you get the perfect trace. Of course, when you have your, for example, for a skirt, if you have your waistline and then your hip line, you don't want a straight line here. That's why you trace a curve, because our bodies are not straight. So the problem is that you can do this by hand. Of course you can, but maybe it's not as harmonic as it will be with this, because it already has the shape, it has some calculations already done for you, so it's really useful. So what you have to do is just place it on top and wiggle it until you get the perfect angle, the perfect curve that fits this measurement. And when you can trace from point A to point B, that's just perfect. It's really useful. And this is what I'm referring to. If I have, for example, my skirt pattern to trace, which is the easiest one we can do to start with, we have a quarter of our hip measurement, we have a quarter of our waist measurement, and then from the hip down is a straight line. It doesn't matter, but the waist and the hip need to be joined by a curve because our body is not straight. So with the ruler we can just place it and moving it a little bit, find the right spot where the curve looks nice. And then we can use the same ruler to do the waistline, to make it soft, to soften this line, because again we're not straight. We're not flat, so we're going to make it nice so it goes nicely on your waist. And what are the advantages of having one of these, or two or three? Is of course the precision. Curves are really difficult to trace if you don't have the right tools, if you do it just by hand. But if you do it with this, you'll get a more precise curve. Maybe if you have a skirt to trace, it's easier, but if you have a sleeve or if you have an armhole to trace, it gets really tricky, because you cannot trace it by hand. It's more complicated. So this helps you a lot, and this can end up in making less mistakes, because if you have this done, you don't have to try it as many times. Maybe you have some loose fabric on one side, or maybe you are lacking fabric on the other. So it's much more precise and it's much comfortable to have. And of course it makes your life much easier, because you don't have to, of course, be trying and cutting and making another error and just crying the mistakes. Well, I always say, not only in the sewing room, but with anything in the house, it can be tools for decorating, it can be things for the kitchen. In my opinion, tools are not a waste of money or something that you spend money on. It's an investment. It makes your life easier, and if you use it a lot, it's going to be just something you reach out for, and it's going to be like the thing you love the most. If you like cooking, you need your stuff. If you like garlic bread, you need your garlic presser thing, and it's much more convenient to have your tools ready for you to use and enjoy. And if you trace your patterns, these are really good. They are really useful. They make your life easier, and they make anything look much better because of the nice finish you get. So consider getting one. There are more expensive ones, there are cheaper ones, and I think I've seen that people have even made their own patterns on the internet, and you can download them. And then if you use some plastic wrapping thing, you can use them as proper rulers, so they are really good. Consider getting yourself a pair. And let me know in the comments what you thought, if you have a pair or a few, if you are considering to get some, and what you think of them, if they are something you would rather use. So let me know that in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you around. Bye. Hola, hola, hola.